you ever felt a sudden chill in a room that was warm just moments ago? Or sensed someone watching you when no one was there? Across the world, people report strange encounters they can't explain, shadowy figures, disembodied voices, and experiences that stay with them for a lifetime. Some call it imagination, others call it the paranormal. But one thing is certain, these stories feel real to the people who lived them. In this video, we're diving into chilling accounts shared by everyday individuals who claim they've come face to face with the unknown. From haunted places to unexplained presences, these experiences challenge what we think we know about reality. Paranormal storytellers and investigators often say it's not the monsters in movies that scare them, it's the genuine fear in a real person's voice when they describe something they still can't explain. Tonight, you'll hear stories that might make you question what really exists in the dark corners of our world. So, before you turn off the lights, make sure you're ready, because some stories don't stay on the screen. The Grandmas by the Roadside Cemetery. One afternoon, a father named Jeff was driving through his hometown with his 3-year-old son strapped into the back seat. It was an ordinary day, music playing softly, his son humming along like kids do. As they passed a small, quiet cemetery along the roadside, the child suddenly went silent. The cemetery wasn't spooky looking, no broken headstones, no fog, just a peaceful stretch of grass dotted with flowers and small memorial markers. From a distance, it almost looked like a garden. Then the little boy leaned forward in his car seat, pointed toward the graves, and said clearly, "Daddy, look at all the people." Jeff glanced over, expecting maybe a group of visitors, but the place was completely empty. "What people?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "The people right there," the boy said casually. "There's so many of them. Lots of grandmas." A cold feeling crept up Jeff's back. He asked his son what the people were doing. "They're just standing there," the boy replied. "They're looking down at the ground." Jeff didn't ask anything else. He just pressed the gas a little harder and kept driving. Later that evening, the moments seemed almost forgotten. His son was watching cartoons in the living room, while Jeff tried to shake off the strange conversation from earlier. Out of nowhere, the boy turned away from the TV and looked at his dad. "Daddy," he said quietly, "those people we saw today?" Jeff felt his stomach drop. "What about them?" "They weren't alive," his son said matter-of-factly. Jeff assumed he meant the cartoon characters and tried to laugh it off. "What do you mean, buddy?" The boy thought for a second, then said something Jeff says he'll never forget. "They were all paused." To this day, Jeff doesn't know what his son saw that afternoon, or if he really saw anything at all. Maybe it was just a child's imagination, or maybe children notice things adults have learned not to see. The Apparition at the Stanley Hotel. High in the Rocky Mountains sits a grand white hotel with a long history, elegant architecture, and a reputation that stretches far beyond Colorado. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park first opened its doors more than a century ago, designed as a luxurious retreat for wealthy travelers looking to escape city life and breathe in the crisp mountain air. In its early days, the hotel was a symbol of sophistication. Fine dining, live music, and breathtaking views drew guests from across the country. But as decades passed and travel trends changed, its popularity faded. By the 1970s, the once glamorous resort had grown quiet, its halls less lively than before. That period of decline would unexpectedly shape pop culture forever. During a stay at the nearly empty hotel, author Stephen King found himself unsettled by the atmosphere, the long corridors, the isolation, the silence. That visit would later inspire his novel, The Shining, and eventually the iconic horror film that introduced the Stanley Hotel to an entirely new audience. After the movie's success, the hotel's fate changed dramatically. No longer just a mountain getaway, it became a destination for horror fans, ghost hunters, and curious travelers hoping to experience its eerie reputation firsthand. And many visitors claim they do. Reports of unexplained footsteps, children's laughter in empty hallways, and shadowy figures have circulated for years. Some brush it off as imagination. Others are convinced the building holds on to pieces of its past. One guest who wasn't sure what to believe was a man named Henry Yao from Texas. In April 2016, intrigued by the hotel's reputation, Yao decided on a spontaneous trip to see the place for himself. He wasn't on a ghost hunt, just curious. After checking in, he had dinner, explored the historic building, and casually snapped photos as he wandered through the corridors. At one point, he paused near the grand staircase, a popular architectural feature inside the hotel. He waited patiently for other guests to move out of frame so he could get a clean shot. Once the stairs were empty, he lifted his phone, took the picture, and continued on his way without giving it another thought. But later that night, things took a strange turn. Yao began feeling unwell. He described intense chills, nausea, and a wave of weakness that seemed to come out of nowhere. His travel companion grew concerned and suggested going to the hospital, but Yao decided to rest instead, hoping the feeling would pass. The sickness lingered through the night. The next day, while heading home, Yao scrolled through the photos from his trip. Most were ordinary shots of the hotel's interior, chandeliers, hallways, antique decor. Then he reached the staircase photo. There, on the steps where he was certain no one had been standing, appeared the faint figure of what looked like a person, partially transparent, blurred, and oddly shaped. The form didn't resemble any of the guests he remembered seeing. Yao was stunned. Unsure what to make of it, he shared the image online, joking that maybe he had accidentally photographed a ghost. He didn't expect much of a reaction. Instead, the image spread rapidly. Paranormal enthusiasts, photographers, and media outlets began analyzing the picture. Some believed it showed not one, but two separate figures. Others suggested lighting effects, reflections, or motion blur could explain it. A few theorized that if something paranormal had occurred, it might even explain why Yao felt sick that night, claiming spirits drawing energy is a common theme in ghost lore. The debates only grew louder. As for Yao himself, he doesn't claim to have the answers. He admits the experience was strange, the illness unsettling, and the photo difficult to explain, but he stops short of declaring it proof of the supernatural. With a nervous laugh in interviews, he simply says he doesn't know what he captured on those stairs. Was it a trick of light, a coincidence, or something that briefly revealed itself inside one of America's most famously haunted hotels? Whatever the truth may be, the photograph remains one of the Stanley Hotel's most talked about modern mysteries, another story added to a place already filled with legends. And for many who visit, that uncertainty is exactly what makes a stay there so unforgettable. The Haunting of the Lizzie Borden House. In the summer of 1892, a quiet neighborhood in Fall River, Massachusetts, became the center of one of America's most infamous murder cases. Andrew Borden and his wife, Abby, were found brutally killed inside their own home, a crime so violent and shocking that it quickly spread through newspapers across the country and beyond. While crime itself was not unheard of in the 19th century, the gruesome nature of these killings stood out. Both victims had been struck multiple times with a hatchet, and suspicion soon fell on someone few could imagine capable of such violence: Andrew's 32-year-old daughter, Lizzie Borden. The investigation, arrest, and dramatic courtroom trial captivated the public. Lizzie was eventually found not guilty, but the verdict did little to erase public doubt. To this day, her name remains permanently tied to the mystery,
and the house where the murders took place has become a destination for those fascinated by both history and the unexplained. More than a century later, the Borden home still stands. Today, it operates as a bed and breakfast and museum, welcoming visitors who come to learn about the infamous case and, for some, to test whether the stories of paranormal activity might be true. One person who didn't initially believe those stories was Suzanne St. John, a real estate agent who also works as a guide at the property. When she first began working there, her interest was purely historical. The murders, the trial, the preserved rooms, that was what fascinated her. Ghost stories, she says, weren't something she paid much attention to. But over time, her perspective began to shift. Guests staying overnight often report strange disturbances. Some claim to hear the sounds of children laughing or playing in the halls long after everyone has gone to bed. Others say personal belongings are moved or misplaced in ways they can't explain. St. John herself has witnessed moments that made her question what might still linger in the house. On one occasion, she entered a room that had been empty and undisturbed, only to find toys scattered across the floor as if someone had been playing there. In another incident, she recalls seeing a framed photograph suddenly tip over. What unsettled her most wasn't just that it fell, but that it appeared to slide several feet across the floor without anyone touching it. There have also been times when doors have behaved strangely. St. John describes a closet door that slowly creaked open on its own, despite there being no draft and no one nearby. Perhaps the most chilling experience, however, happened close to the anniversary of the murders. On that day, St. John and two other guides were inside the house when all three of them suddenly felt a sharp stabbing pain in their left eyes at nearly the same moment. The detail disturbed them deeply, as Andrew Borden had suffered fatal blows to that same area. Still, the house seems to hold one story that unsettles visitors more than any other. During one tour, a guide politely asked everyone in the group to silence their phones before beginning. The house was quiet as the tour started, until a phone suddenly rang. Embarrassed, one woman glanced at her screen, then her expression changed. The guide told her it was fine to step outside and answer the call, but the woman stayed frozen for a moment before softly saying, "It's my mom." The guide nodded, confused, and repeated that she could take the call. That's when the woman looked up and said something that left the entire group speechless. "My mom passed away 2 years ago." Whether these moments have logical explanations or not, they add to the long legacy of mystery surrounding the Lizzie Borden house. For some, it's simply a historic crime scene preserved in time. For others, it's a place where the past may not be entirely at rest. And for those who spend the night there, the question lingers long after the lights go out. Is the house just holding memories, or is something still walking its halls?
The doll that wouldn't stay still. When Marty was growing up in the 1990s, she had an unusual fascination. While other kids were into cartoons or action figures, she loved old-school ventriloquism, especially the classic performer Edgar Bergen and his famous wooden partner, Charlie McCarthy. So when her father stumbled across a ventriloquist's dummy in a tiny magic shop just outside Santa Rosa, California, he thought he'd found the perfect birthday surprise. The shop itself was small and cluttered, filled with trick decks of cards, fake flowers, and dusty props from stage acts long forgotten. The dummy sat on a high shelf, dressed in a little suit, its painted smile frozen in place. Marty's dad decided to buy it. As he paid, the cashier gave him an odd look. Not playful, not joking, just strange. Then he said something that stuck with Marty's father long after they left the store. "You know, once you put your hand inside, he's going to wake up." They both laughed it off as a weird sales joke. But the moment Marty opened that birthday present, she was completely in love. "I adored that doll," she would later say. "I took it everywhere. I talked to it like it was real." At first, everything seemed normal as a kid carrying around a ventriloquist's dummy can be. But after a few weeks, Marty started noticing small things she couldn't explain.
The doll's face looked different sometimes. Its head was made of solid molded plastic, the features painted on permanently. The smile, the eyes, the eyebrows, none of it was designed to move. Yet Marty swore the expression would shift. Some days the grin seemed wider. Other times the eyes looked less cheerful, almost watchful. Her parents assumed it was just imagination. Still, something about the doll began to make the family uneasy. Eventually, they decided it shouldn't stay out in the open at night. They placed it inside a cupboard before going to bed just to keep it out of sight. Then came the night that changed everything. Marty and her family woke up to a soft sound coming from the living room. Light, quick footsteps, like someone small walking across the floor. They thought it might be the dog, or maybe someone had gotten up for water. But when they checked, the house was silent. The only thing out of place was the dummy. It was sitting upright on the couch. They were certain they had locked it away before bed. Marty remembered clearly because she was protective of it and always made sure it was put somewhere safe. After that, the atmosphere in the house shifted. More strange things began happening. One afternoon, Marty and her father were out running errands while her uncle stayed home alone. He later said he heard Marty's dad calling his name from the living room. Confused, he answered back, but there was no reply. When he walked into the room, no one was there, except the doll, sitting on the couch, facing the hallway. As weeks passed, the activity escalated. Family members started hearing their names whispered when no one was around. At night, faint footsteps echoed through the house. Doors creaked. Shadows seemed to move just outside the corner of their vision. No one wanted to be alone with the dummy anymore. Eventually, Marty's parents decided they couldn't keep it in the house. Deeply religious and raised with strong cultural beliefs about spirits, they feared something dark might be attached to it. They tried to destroy it. First, they placed it on a backyard grill and lit the flames. According to Marty, the fire burned hot, but the doll didn't catch. The clothes singed slightly, but the body wouldn't melt, warp, or blacken the way they expected. Frustrated and frightened, they tried cutting it apart with a knife. The blade barely made a mark. Finally, they threw it into the trash bin outside, hoping it would be gone for good when the garbage truck came. The next day, after the garbage had been collected, Marty's father went outside to bring the empty bin back. Inside the can was the doll, lying at the bottom. After that, they didn't take any more chances. Marty's father dug a deep hole in the backyard. The dummy was placed inside, and the hole was sealed, not just with dirt, but with a layer of cement poured over the top. Buried, sealed, hidden. The family eventually moved away from the house, leaving the yard and whatever might have been trapped beneath it behind. But Marty says none of them have ever completely forgotten about the doll, and sometimes, late at night, she still wonders, if something was inside it, did burying it really stop it? Or is it just waiting until it finds its way back?
The imaginary friend. Jacqueline grew up believing she had a vivid imagination. Like many children, she talked to someone no one else could see, a quiet, gentle presence she simply accepted as part of her world. Over time, most of those early childhood memories blurred, fading into that soft haze where dreams and reality tend to mix. But one figure always remained clear in her mind. She remembers visiting her grandparents' house in Oklahoma, a modest place, with a peaceful backyard and a large tree that cast cool shade during the summer. It was her favorite spot. That's where she would sit and talk with the man she knew as Pa Hank. According to Jacqueline, he wasn't scary, he wasn't strange, he was warm, patient, and full of stories. He would sit with her beneath the tree and talk about the old days, about his life, about the world as it used to be, even about the Prohibition era. He was such an interesting storyteller, Jacqueline later said. I loved listening to him. To her, he felt just like any loving grandfather. There was only one detail Jacqueline didn't know at the time. Pa Hank, her real grandfather,
had passed away the year before she was born. She came into the world in 1982. He died in 1981. As a child, she never questioned how she could spend so much time talking with someone she had never technically met. To her, he was simply there, part of the house, part of her visits, part of her memories. It wasn't until she grew older that the pieces began to fall into place. Her family, it turns out, was already aware that something unusual lingered in the home. Jacqueline later learned that her grandmother avoided staying in the house on the anniversary of her husband's death. The loss had happened inside those walls, and the date carried a heavy feeling each year. As a little girl, Jacqueline had also noticed small things that made sense only in hindsight. When she stayed overnight, she sometimes heard the familiar sounds of someone moving through the house late at night, footsteps, the faint creak of floorboards, the subtle noises of a home that should have been asleep. She assumed it was normal. She assumed it was him. Looking back, she now wonders how she accepted it all so easily. "I never thought I was talking to a ghost," she explained later. "It just felt like I was spending time with my grandpa." That's the part that still stays with her, the comfort. There was no fear, no sense of danger. Her imaginary friend didn't hide in shadows or cause things to crash in the night. He told stories. He kept her company. He made her feel safe. As an adult, the realization carries a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, it's unsettling to think she may have been interacting with someone who had already passed on. On the other, there's something deeply comforting in the idea that a grandfather she never got to meet in life may have still found a way to know her. For Jacqueline, the memory doesn't feel like a haunting. It feels like family. And even now, when she thinks about that quiet backyard and the shade of that old tree, she doesn't picture an imaginary friend. She remembers sitting beside Pa Hank, listening to his stories as if he had been there all along.